President of the United States, look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other person. I just spoke at Dartmouth on healthcare at the medical school, or not. I guess I wasn't actually on the campus, but the people from the medical school were at the. I want to be clear. I'm not going nuts. I'm not sure whether it was a medical school or where the hell I spoke, but it was on the campus. I want to thank Rich Fitzgerald, the county executive, Allegheny County executive, for being here. And I propose, and I'm going to digress slightly. We're in a situation. The president asked me to head up a cancer moonshot.
President Biden, just to be clear, would you or would you not rejoin the TPP? Yes or no?
I would not rejoin the TPP as it was initially put forward. In Guatemala, El Salvador, and to win and say in Honduras and say, look, I know I'm called middle class, Joe. It's not meant as a compliment. Means I'm not sophisticated. And there's an area where there's an important difference between this area of important difference between candidates. Not money. The country wasn't built by Wall Street bankers, CEOs, and hedge fund managers. This guy is moving to just foment hate. The price for whatever the drug costs are. Well, folks, eliminate one tax loophole out of $1.6 trillion worth, $1.4 trillion worth. Out of $1.4 billion. It's hard to even say it so much. And by the way, it costs a lot of money. It cost about $740 billion over 10 years. Every single solitary person qualified in community college, increasing number of 6 to 9 million people. If you like your employer-based policy, you can keep that policy. If you agree with me, go to Joe 30330 and help me in this fight. You want to be part of this campaign? Pick up your phones. Pick up your phone now. Send a text to the word United to the number 30330 or 303-330. POO. Wait. You got it. It's on the back there. Now he's feeling the pressure of an economy that's teetering on a recession. To say that LGBTQ people have no civil rights. And immediately changed the law in the state of Delaware protecting transgender people. I took on Putin in terms of in terms of what was going on in Ukraine. My long time friend, and she's a friend. She's been my friend in and out of public life. It will cost 1/30th. Costs a lot of money. Almost $740 billion to do what I want to do over 10 years, but not $30 trillion. Not 30 trillion. I'm among many qualified people. I'm the best qualified person for this job. And the reason is not just to help people who have or in fact are and likely to get Alzheimer's. Because think of what's been adopted. Milton Friedman's notion that the only obligation, but that all changed for the Republican friends in the late 80s when they adopted Milton Friedman's notion that the only obligation. We find ourselves in a position where you're in a circumstance where we've adopted Milton Friedman's notion, the conservative economist. Now, if in fact you are in a position, what was the case? You worked for Jimmy. That's why we're so special. It took courage. It took resilience. They know who we are. We have to let them know who we are. We can do it, and it's going to take billions of dollars to do it, and we can afford to do it. We can't afford not to do it. Cut in half the number uninsured of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Cut in half. Don't worry, I'm so serious. Children, I love to hear them. But President Trump and the demagogues around the world, but if Donald Trump is reelected, so people are figuring out there's not a damn thing we can do that we set our mind to that we can't get done. The single most stressed I was asked to speak to the American Psychiatric Association, to go over to the University of London and speak to the World Psychiatric Association. It's interesting. I just spoke to the International Society of Psychiatric, the International Organization of Psychiatrists. I forget the formal name of it. over in London because this is not a Republican talking point. The Republicans are trying to kill Obamacare. Union workers, the UAW took incredible cuts in their future. Now we have $1,600,000,000,000 worth of loopholes in the law. But I never ever thought that I'd see what I saw in Charlotte. You know, I came home from law school. Avoid having an excuse to walk by the dealer and say, no, I'm not going to be a mule. I got something to do. I got to go do boom, boom, boom. If we just were to reinstitute the CAFE standards. And I think Secretary, excuse me, I wasn't the press going to say I'm downgrading him by calling him Senator Booker. The fact is that the bills that the future president here, that the senator is talking about, I was the one that suggested to the president, President Obama, I don't want to confuse presidents here. We provide a Medicare option. That's exactly what Barack and I talked about in the beginning.
Couldn't get it through though.
So I couldn't tell anybody but Barack. He's one of my closest friends. Invaded another country and annexed a significant portion of it called Crimea. He's saying that it was my boss, it was his fault. I got assault weapons banned for 10 years. It had to be reauthorized because of hanging chads in Florida. The last president said, no, I'm not going to reauthorize it.
Are you tired of the media spinning the truth and pushing false narratives? Well, take a look at this. Over the last 3 years, while the establishment media was pushing false narratives and uncorroborated evidence, we investigated and shed light on some of the deepest government corruption in this nation, something that makes Watergate look like nothing in comparison.
We need to work again with Canada and Mexico as neighbors, not as adversaries. Saks or Benettons or Nike or whatever in the market, in their places where the malls. Donald Trump does pose an extra threat to this. It's not hypothetical.
There's a lot we still don't know about this virus. The only way to stop it is to kill it. The Chinese, they believe the government lied to them. They believe that they knew about this. It was going on for 2 months before they did anything. There's a lot of anger. It became a crisis. It was just out of control. Italy waited too long. South Korea responded immediately.
20% unemployment may be a small number compared to where it could be 6 months from now.
We don't want the airlines to go bankrupt. The consequence would be catastrophic.
But you're still saying 18 months.
I think that's extremely aggressive because of the
It
face.
is extremely aggressive. Or
It
it's
is.
not.
It
And
is.
even 12 to 18 months.
Yes.
It is. How long can we really sustain this?
Younger people are going to the bars. They're the most dangerous because they don't even know they're ill.
How bad can this thing get?
Right now, the death rate in the United States is 2%. That's a lot of people.
So we have the solution right now with a drug to fix it.
What if it has a side effect no one anticipated?
Why don't we do social distancing for those above 50, but below 50, let them go to work?
They go back home, they're infected, and they kill their parents and grandparents? Is that what you're telling me? Let's kill all the capitalists off. We want all the CEOs, the vice presidents,
saying that.
middle management. No, I'm not saying you're
No,
saying
I'm
it.
saying if you're my CEO, I'd say, dude, go home.
We're getting to the bad. This is the bad. 80% of our drugs are dependent on China. This is a national security issue.
That's very concerning for the average person.
This is a real problem. It's a crisis. It is not the apocalypse.
Tell the media that.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could take sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got Bet David? Valuetainment, yeah, the value's contagious. This world of entrepreneurs, we get no value to hate it. I didn't run, homie, look what I become. I'm the one.
So look, with the recent videos we've been doing on coronavirus, many of you guys were asking about if I can bring a couple experts here to talk about this pandemic. So today, I have with me two guests. One is Professor Andrew Natsios, who was a former lieutenant colonel for 23 years. And I also have with me Dr. Parker, who's a former colonel in the military. They both are experts on the topic of pandemic. And I'll let them introduce themselves to you on what they do professionally and many different experiences they have. But I got a list of questions to go with them. So having said that, let's get right into it. Gentlemen, thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if you don't mind taking a moment and just kind of introducing yourself, what you do, we'll take the lead from there.
So I'm a professor in the international program at the Bush School of Government at Texas A&M. I run the Scowcroft Institute of International Affairs. General Scowcroft was the national security advisor to President Bush 41, the older Bush who just died a couple of years ago. So 12 years I taught. I used to teach at Georgetown University in the Welsh School. But for much of my career, my later career, I was in international development. So what do you do to help poor people in the developing world? In agriculture and health. So I was the administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, which is the foreign aid program of the U.S. government that helps poor countries. And we've been doing that since 1961. President Kennedy created it. President Bush was one of our great heroes because he tripled the budget for foreign aid. Most people don't know that. And his
Excellent. All right, such a DVR from the Center of the Vice Special Borders Update tape, right?
Africa, 50% of many countries.
Greg, you're not
The
infallible.
HIV/AIDS program
I learned
started
that.
I know.
also.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Brett Barron. For the first time since mid-March, there is no weekday coronavirus briefing or presidential
So I
news
did that. I
conference
was with
in the
World
late
Vision
afternoon
NGO
period.
for 5
Instead,
years.
President Trump made comments at a pair of White House events today as
So I have an academic
cases in
career.
the U.S.
I have
now
a
eclipse 1 million.
career
Almost 60,000 of those have resulted in deaths. 115,000 patients have recovered from COVID-19. The president is celebrating another southern state, Texas, suspending much of its economic lockdown. Tennessee and Wisconsin will begin reopening tomorrow, with several others set to relax restrictions by the end of the week. All of this comes as the Trump administration's efforts to try to keep American business from going under are so in demand, they crashed the system. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts starts us off tonight from the North Lawn. Good evening, John.
Brett, good evening to you. And there are some other problems looming that are demanding presidential action. President Trump expected to soon sign an executive order to keep meat processing plants open. In the executive order, which comes as he was warned about potential disruptions to the meat supply chain, the president will designate processing plants as critical infrastructure. The government will also provide protective equipment for employees in the plant to protect them against the coronavirus. This, as the president today celebrated small businesses that have been kept afloat through another emergency action. President Trump in the White House East Room today, touting some of the success stories of the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program.
In the 14 days following its launch, we processed as many loans as the SBA would typically process in over 14 years. So in 14 days, they did more work and more loans, both in terms of applications and in terms of dollar amount than they did in 14 years.
The plan has handed out hundreds of billions of dollars in loans to small businesses, forgivable if they retain all their employees. But there have been glitches in the program. Yesterday, the loan website crashed under the weight of new applications, and it was revealed the LA Lakers basketball team scooped up $4.6 million in a small business loan.
I never expected in a million years that the Los Angeles Lakers, which I'm a big fan of the team, but I'm not a big fan of the fact that they took a $4.6 million loan. I think that's outrageous.
The Lakers returned the money, but the SBA and Treasury said today they will fully investigate any forgivable loans over $2 million. President Trump is anxious to get the nation back to work, today applauding Texas Governor Greg Abbott's decision to reopen many businesses. The president tweeting, Texas to open businesses in phases beginning Friday. Great job being done by Greg Abbott. The president also meeting in the Oval Office today with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who says he will announce what Florida will do tomorrow, pointing out that a lot of economic activity continued safely during the shutdown.
Florida, going from where we are now to phase one, is not a very big leap. I think that it will be able to be a small step for us, but we're going to approach it in a very measured, thoughtful, and data-driven way.
Reopening safely will require a dramatic increase in testing. The White House yesterday unveiling its new guidelines to, at a minimum, test 2% of every state's population. But Democrats shot the whole thing down as vague and unresponsive.
The report they issued yesterday. So the Senate didn't have any details. And then at the end, it said, let the states do it.
With the Senate returning next week, Democrats say it's the perfect opportunity to hold hearings on the White House response. But the House's decision to stay away from D.C. drew a measure of derision from the president.
I mean, and we're reading content that we have employees, agents, clients, everybody. There's a lot of people that are afraid because
President Trump is still bullish on economic recovery, saying that the second and third quarters will be what they are. But he projects that the fourth quarter will have strong growth, and then next year it will be stronger still.
So
just projections, though,
you
right?
can start off with ugly or bad.
We shall see. John Roberts live at the North Lawn. John, thanks. The Dow snapped a 4-day winning streak, losing 32 today. The S&P 500 dropped 15. The Nasdaq was off 122. While it would be understandable to feel there is sometimes an information overload about the coronavirus here in the U.S., we know very little about its effects in certain closed-off countries. Correspondent Jillian Turner tells us why tonight.
Russia, Iran, and North Korea, so-called COVID black holes, where U.S. officials can't track the virus's spread, are making it hard to eradicate coronavirus.
We really have a moral obligation to the world to not only talk about it, but provide that information.
This week in confirmed cases, the Kremlin reporting 93,558 cases and 867 deaths. But Russian frontline workers are ringing alarm bells, saying the real numbers are likely much higher. The head of the Alliance of Doctors in Russia, who was detained by Russian police after speaking out, claims Russian authorities are lying to the international community. Putin today extended do not work orders through May 11th and admitted Russia hasn't even reached its peak.
The situation is still very difficult. We are yet to pass the peak of the epidemic.
His comments come just a day after the foreign ministry claimed victory against the U.S. in the fight against the virus.
Being a part of so-called. I would say that's part of the good that the
The same old going so I wrote to the paper.
I know that now having to
took out a personal
our economy.
Though I'm nobody's poet,
And I would say also that
yes, I like being get caught in the rain. I'm not marching to hell. I am into
I think there are basically ways the vaccine Second, medication children by taking the pill to kill the virus, called the intravenous virus. We call them antibiotics for bacterial infections, antiretrovirals for viral infections of the virus. We have a bunch of antiretrovirals that already exist, but they don't know what it'll do to this virus. Could make things worse, conceivably. Not likely, but conceivably. We don't know which one works better than the others. So they're testing them now. Jerry tells me 2 to 6 months.
Yes, so there's some promising antivirals that are already approved, FDA approved for other indications, and the preliminary evidence. So some of these antivirals, they have efficacy against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And so clinical trials have already begun.
Hello? I have things playing. What is it? Well, I prefer not to, just to kind of cut that line off for myself. I'll have some in a couple hours. You can just leave it out hot, or is it reheat? I saw it in the microwave thing. Yeah, I don't really have any.
But we have to do it because the permanent long-term fix is
No, I'm not going to end up in those.
So we're doing the right thing now.
No, I just don't have an appetite. I want to tell you.
Because the data is very, very interesting. There's more and more data. There's a lot of data from China, and there was a large study done that was published in the American Journal of American Medical Association by Chinese scientists. We think, our scientists believe that it was legitimately done. A lot of the data, I don't believe the data coming out of China. I think it's cooked because the Chinese government's an autocratic regime, and they're using this crisis to advance their strategic interests that have nothing to do with they're using the crisis to push us aside and say, we are the ones that should be leading the world, not the United States. We can talk about that later. But we have data now out of Italy, and Italy and South Korea are democratic systems. Their scientists are not going to be ordered what to do. They wouldn't follow it anyway. But a study came out yesterday from the very large caseload in Italy, which is now the second largest in the world. It is next to China. And I think there are 27,000 people infected. Lost a large number of people. It's the highest death rate in the world. 8% of the people that sick died. South Korea, who was way ahead of everyone else, had the only
watching the show from some watch party. Just send me a friend request, and I will accept you right away, because like